Hello everyone, and welcome to Legacy's Allure, a brand new position-based card game that's not really a card game and functions a lot more like chess. Most of this video will be showing off their Tabletop Simulator mod on Steam, but it is also being sold as a physical game. I know most of you watching this are coming from Faeria, and veteran players especially are getting frustrated with the lack of updates, and there really haven't been any games quite like Faeria, but if this sounds like you, I think I may just have the game to scratch that itch. Legacy's Allure has completely eliminated RNG by removing the usual deck of cards that card games come with, and instead you'll get to build your own custom pool of cards called a kingdom, and take turns placing them on the board. This makes all card information known to both players before the game even begins, so if you lose, it's on you. Perfect top decks won't save you here. Positioning is super important in this game. Each player can only take action with one of their creatures on their turn, much like chess, and then that creature is exhausted, unable to act again until all other creatures have had a turn. That singular action can be a movement, an attack, or using an ability, but you can only choose to do one of those three things. There are some special keywords that allow you to do more, such as charging, which lets you move and attack all in one go. When you attack another creature, they trade stats, as you would expect, unless the defending creature can be one-shot. In this case, my Skorg Hellion has enough attack to fully destroy this swordsman. And again, much like chess, my guy gets to move onto and capture this space, but he doesn't take any damage this time. If you have a background in MTG, this is kind of like all your units having first strike. Then after taking turns using and exhausting all your creatures, the round ends and you can refresh all your creatures again. So because you only get one action per turn, when you're deciding what creature you want to take action with, you have to pay careful attention that you're not setting up your opponent for an easy clear on your best unit elsewhere on the board, which oftentimes in this game will be your hero card. This is a very powerful creature that you can equip with special item and ability cards, almost like MOBAs in a way. They also have a personal mana pool to draw from for some of the more powerful abilities. Some non-hero cards have a mana pool as well. And for all you lore enthusiasts out there, there is a lore book. You can even get a physical copy of it if you support them on Kickstarter, which we'll talk about later. But this book gives backstory to all the heroes currently in the game, drawing from high fantasy races like elves and orcs. Currently, there are 3 different factions, with 10 in total planned to be released in the future, and some of these planned factions will break out of the standard high fantasy theme and take on a more unique role in this game's lore. But back to the heroes themselves. Unlike chess or other position-based card games you might have played, like Duelist, you don't lose the game when your hero dies. This functions more like the queen in chess. So instead of having a king to checkmate, we have a different win condition. At the start of the game, you roll a die to see who is the attacking player and who's the defender. And by the end of the 7th round, the attacking player will win if they manage to have an allied creature in the center hex. Otherwise, the defending player wins. So this not only speeds up the game and gives a goal to drive players to fight, but also prevents anticlimactic ties from happening. Now, to briefly touch back on the lack of RNG that I mentioned earlier, this has actually been stated by the developer as something he wants to avoid at all costs, even with a card's abilities. So if you're getting frustrated with queuing into High Roll Burn 47 times in a row on Faeria's ranked ladder, this game might be a welcome break. As someone with a background in both chess and competitive card games, I've been very impressed with what I've seen so far. I haven't played much, but I can already start to see the deep and complex strategies hiding under the surface. There is a growing competitive scene as well. Weekly tournaments are held and broadcasted on their Discord channel, linked down below if you want to watch them live. They start at 12 PM PST, or if that doesn't work out for you, they post some commentated matches on their YouTube channel. If you are worried about investing time into learning another competitive scene, I totally get that. I'm always cautious to get into competitive games because I just don't have as much free time as I used to. But as a Faeria player, I think you have a pretty significant advantage to learning this game's core mechanics than other card game players do. I mean, an entire half of Faeria's gameplay is its chess-like element, So I've noticed a lot of those skills carrying over for me personally. Things like value trades, importance of high mobility creatures, threat range, positioning, many of these things that other card games simply don't have. There are some unique resource management considerations as well in the form of gold cost, which we'll talk about later, and also the value that a unit's action has, since the creature's action essentially represents an entire turn. The next big thing, of course, is memorizing all the cards. If you really want to get competitive, it can be a bit overwhelming at first because you have an entire board of cards to look at all at once, and make sure you're not playing into some devastating ability. But since this game is fairly new and the dev is trying to make every card playable and well balanced, there's less than 200 cards, with more coming in the future, but this isn't too bad a card pool to learn right now, and from what I've seen so far, there are a few skilled players, but many are just finding the game now and learning how to play, so this is a great time to join if you are looking for something fresh. If you do want to try this game out for yourself, you'll have to have Tabletop Simulator on Steam, and then install the free Legacies Allure mod. There's no matchmaking system on this, of course, so you'll need to be a part of their Discord server to find an opponent as well. But the people over there are super kind and inviting, much like the Faeria community, and there's also a helpful how to play video made by the developer I'd recommend checking out as well. I'll post links to all those things down in the description, as well as a link to their Kickstarter page, which is ending very soon, March 17th. If this game interests you, you can head over there and actually get the physical game shipped to you to try out with your friends when you support them on Kickstarter. If you have made it this far through the video, I assume your interest has been piqued, so let's dive a little deeper into this game's core mechanics and strategical decisions. You can start with a pre-built kingdom already set up for you and your opponent when you're first learning the game, but a huge part of this game is its draft mode, not to be confused with draft modes from other games because this works quite a bit differently. In Legacies Allure's draft mode, you have 160 gold to band together a kingdom of your choosing. Every card apart from heroes has a certain gold cost associated with it, seen in the top right corner, so you could fill your kingdom with the highest costing cards in the game, but that's gonna leave you very small in sheer numbers, and some of these little guys are super powerful if used correctly, like this Gladehawk. After you've built your kingdom on their website, you copy-paste it into Tabletop Simulator, and the drafting process can begin. The attacking player goes first, dropping however many cards they want within the summoning zone, and then passing to the defender. The defender has to match or exceed the attacker's combined gold count by placing their own cards within their summoning zone. Then you repeat this process until the gold cap has been reached for both players. And this gold cap is usually only 80 gold, so even though you get to bring 160 gold kingdom, you only actually get to place down 80 gold's worth of cards. And this is done intentionally to help with counterpicking certain cards. If your opponent drafts a Crag Wyvern with charging, you can draft a Pikeman with steadfast, which prevents taking damage from charging. And if your opponent never drafts any chargers, you can spend your gold on something else. It's like having a sideboard. So this, paired with the decision of where to position your drafted creatures in response to your opponent, creates this hugely dynamic strategy that will probably affect the outcome of the game as a whole. Throughout this process, you also have to make sure you're setting up a solid structure to your army. If you drop a weak ranged unit on your front line, it'll be easily picked off during the early rounds, and will get in the way of your more important units because you can't move through allies unless you have a certain keyword. So protecting your frail support units behind a wall of beefier bodies is almost always the way to go. And as the game goes on, you'll have to be thinking about how a move might disassemble that structure and weigh the options as to whether it's worth opening up your backline just to take a good trade. Once the drafting process is done, the real game can begin, and players start using their creatures' actions one at a time until everything is exhausted. The first player to claim the center hex also gets a temporary health buff, which may be incentive enough to rush their first thing. However, you don't want to put your creatures too out of position right away, or your opponent could swing back hard. Before you exhaust every one of your creatures though, you have one more decision you'll have to keep in the back of your mind, and that is who gets to go first on the following round. Every time you take an action with a creature, you pass priority to your opponent, and whoever has priority once all creatures are exhausted gets to go first in the next round. Now, one more thing a creature can do is forfeit their action for the round. This will still exhaust the creature, but you won't lose priority by doing this, assuming your opponent hasn't also been passing. This lets you give up potential repositioning or attacks in favor of taking the first turn next round. So, to give my brief thoughts on this game, I've only played a few matches, but I'm hooked. While this game does take away a lot of card game mechanics like a randomly shuffled deck to draw from, it still manages to keep all the best elements in my opinion. Messing around in the deck builder is still a thing, thinking about and talking with other players about their cool custom builds, and of course, each card having their own uniqueness to them. I also really used to love chess back in the day, so this game has made me feel right at home. Obviously, this is just what interests me though. If you are someone who's a fan of RNG elements to keep you excited, this might not be the game for you. If you're having an off day and make a huge blunder in a game, there's no random chance you're going to recover from that unless your opponent also makes a mistake. But the board has so many options that if you do accidentally throw your opponent a free unit, it might just be an incredible bait that you didn't see at first, but when your opponent takes that free trade, you just stomp all over them. Now I should mention that this video was actually sponsored by Legacy's Allure, but I want to stress that all the comments I made in this video are genuine, and I really am excited to learn more about this game and maybe compete in some future tournaments. I'll also be streaming this game on Sunday, March 13th at 12 PM PST if you want to hang out and learn the game all together. Just remember it is daylight savings that day, so be sure to follow me over at twitch.tv/Moonfasa, or if you missed the stream, I'll also upload any footage to my brand new VODs channel linked on screen now. But let me know in the comments what you think of this and whether you're thinking of playing. It'll be a very beginner-friendly stream, and maybe we could have some people from chat participate if there's an interest. And again, check out their Discord channel and Kickstarter before it ends next week, links down below. But anyways, take care, and I'll see you next time.